from the role he's held since 2009. Edward Salt reports.
Will administer justice to all manner of persons without favour or partiality.
July 2009, and Michael Burt is sworn in as Jersey's next bailiff. Fast forward 6 years to today, and the same man is getting ready to leave his position as Chief Judge and the head of Jersey States for the very last time.
It's of course a great honour to have followed in the line of so many distinguished predecessors. So I think I shall take away how lucky I've been.
So Michael Burt was knighted in 2012, but he says the most challenging part of his term of office was the suspension of the island's dean, the Very Reverend Bob Key, over his handling of an allegation of abuse against a church warden. The dean was later reinstated.
It was extraordinary to find him being suspended without even seeing the report on which the bishop was basing it. I remember speaking to him at the time and urging him that it was not necessary without seeing the report to suspend the dean, but he went ahead.
It also led to a split in the church, with the Channel Islands now being overseen by the Bishop of Dover. The bailiff still feels, though, that the island is yet to have closure.
It's clear that the report clears the dean because he has said there are going to be no disciplinary measures. It's most disappointing, I think, for the dean and the rest of the church in Jersey that they can't put this incident behind them by having this report, as the bishop promised, and getting on with their lives.
Sir Michael Burt will be succeeded by William Ballash at a ceremony next week. There's been a lot said over recent years about the bailiff's dual role as the island's chief judge and head of the states, and no doubt that debate will continue as a new chapter in Jersey's history dawns. Edward Salt, BBC Channel Islands News.
More islanders with jobs in time for the summer season. That's the message from Jersey's Social Security Minister tonight. A campaign to get unemployed islanders back into work is to be extended, with the government funding the wages of workers in hotels or restaurants. Jen Smith explains.
Catherine had been out of work for months when she asked Back to Work for help last year. She hadn't considered working hospitality but was matched to the role after meeting an employer.
If you haven't got anything to lose, I had no idea if it was going to be right for me at the time. I had nothing else going for me. I was kind of lost after school. You come out in the real world and you don't know what you're doing, and it was kind of like a helping hand in getting somewhere with my life at the time.
This isn't the first hospitality scheme from Jersey's Back to Work project, but it is a new approach. Now the states, rather than the employer, will fund the wages of trainees for around 8 weeks.
They will be helped, mentored and buddied all the way through their 8 weeks. And after that, we hope very much that the hospitality organisation will be glad to take them on.
Despite unemployment in Jersey being at its lowest level for 3 years, 1,440 people are out of work at the moment, and 4 out of 5 of those were born in the island or in the UK. As Catherine gets ready for the Friday night rush, it's hoped this scheme will lead to more people like her making careers in hospitality. It's just in time too as the industry gears up for the new season.
We need to start training fairly early in the year because we get very busy as soon as the summer months start to hit. So I think that probably is quite a good idea.
And for those like Catherine, the training's proved invaluable. She and her boss are looking forward to a busy season. Jen Smith, BBC Channel Islands News, Jersey.
Mobile phone users in the Channel Islands have rated the customer service offered by Sure and Airtel much higher than JT's. A survey by the competition regulator shows just 27% of JT customers are satisfied with their billing, compared to 80% for Sure and 78% for Airtel. And 51% of JT customers said they'd switch provider, compared to 12% for Sure and 23% for Airtel.
It's really up to consumers to use the information in the surveys to make a choice of the provider they want to use in the future. And I'd urge all the operators to listen to their customers because they will have a choice, and if they're not happy, customers can ultimately vote with their feet.
Parking spaces could be lost in St Peter Port town centre if plans to land cruise ship passengers on the Albert Pier are approved by planners. The Public Services Department's applied for permission to rearrange the layout on the pier with the loss of 54 spaces. Well, this year it's expected that around 140,000 cruise passengers will come to the island, and for every £10 they spend, £2 million could be pumped back into Guernsey's economy. Mike Wilkins has more.
For cruise passengers, this is their gateway to Guernsey. After a short journey on a tender, there's a quick climb up the ramp and then a stroll towards the shops of St Peter Port. However, this area is a commercial one, with ferries and freight ships jostling with the smaller cruise ship tenders. So it's been decided to land passengers between April and September at the other end of town, here on the Albert Pier. It'll mean the loss of 54 parking spaces, all but 11 would be relocated.
It's going to be really difficult, and the locals aren't going to be able to come down and do the shopping, and that's going to be very difficult. I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. I'm not sure how it's going to be for people parking their cars with lots of people walking through here, but I'm sure they can address that issue.
But not everyone's happy with their plans. Some coach operators and cruise ship handlers have told me today that they're not happy with the plans in their current form, but they wouldn't go on camera and do an interview because they claim that they're going to have discussions next week with the states on the issue. The cost of switching the cruise ship landing point and installing new pontoons is around £250,000, something the Public Services Department feels will be easily recouped.
So we'll get that paid back in only a couple of years, and the income to Guernsey, it's worth around about £3 million or more to Guernsey every year.
Despite the concerns of the coach companies and the loss of parking, the Public Services Department insists it's necessary to meet the growing number of passengers visiting Guernsey, with 140,000 of them due to land on this spot later this year. Mike Wilkins, BBC Channel Islands News, Guernsey.
You're watching the BBC in the Channel Islands. Coming up after us in Spotlight with Justin and Janine, the Great Mead come back, where a new generation of drinkers are enjoying a medieval tipple. Now, 50 years ago tomorrow, on the 24th of January 1965, Sir Winston Churchill died. He was 90 years old. As Prime Minister during the Second World War, Churchill was arguably the UK's most influential leader of the 20th century. But his legacy is felt keenly here in the Channel Islands too.
The ceasefire began yesterday to be sounded all along the fronts, and our dear Channel Islands are also to be freed today.
Jubilant scenes in Jersey as the British Prime Minister announced the end of 5 years of German rule. And as celebrating Liberation Day became an annual tradition, Churchill's words would go on to be repeated year after year. A pivotal figure in Channel Islands history, so when Churchill died 20 years later, Jersey's government named a park and built a statue in his honour.
The states decided that they were going to commemorate Winston Churchill's death. The Jersey Evening Post launched a penny fund to raise money from the public, and they put together a plinth from Latak quarry, granite, and a sculpture Anthony Gray did the bas-relief that you'll be able to see.
But while Churchill was their liberator, many islanders also saw him as an abandoner after refusing to defend them against Nazi occupation in the first place, then later trying to block much-needed ration ships in an attempt to starve the Germans out.
It was a judgment call, and fortunately he was overruled. Otherwise there would have been considerable starvation, and a number of islanders, probably my own mother included, would have starved to death.
Churchill's links to the Channel Islands predated the occupation, though, as he visited Jersey and Guernsey with his wife in 1913 when he was in charge of the British Navy. And local archivists say the photos tell an important story about the period.
They're part of a really interesting collection, actually, by Percival Dunham, who is essentially Jersey's first photojournalist. And you can see that he was clearly apt to be catching the personalities of the day. Mr. Churchill went and played a round of golf at Grouville, and Mrs. Churchill, as we've seen in the photograph, had come prepared for tennis. She'd brought her tennis racket.
50 years after his death, Winston Churchill's relationship with the Channel Islands is still being explored. His namesake park providing a permanent place for islanders to reflect on his legacy. And there'll be much more about Churchill's legacy in the Channel Islands on BBC Radio Jersey tomorrow morning. But we're turning to the weather now, and David, I almost think the weather's turned a corner. It's not getting dark, or it's not getting dark till about 5:15 now. It's feeling a tiny bit warmer. You've got to have some good news for the weekend, surely.
I have got some good news for the weekend, Claire. Actually, for us, the weekend doesn't look too bad. More cloud on Sunday than there will be tomorrow, but both days largely dry. just that little bit warmer perhaps in the second half of the weekend too. Tomorrow fine and dry, plenty of winter sunshine, but there's a chilly breeze. As long as you wrap up warmly, it's an okay day for the outside tomorrow. This line of cloud will bring us some rain overnight tonight. Not much of that has got to us yet. It's largely across parts of Cornwall and Devon now, but it's sinking its way towards us overnight tonight. So it'll produce some rain, most of the rain falling while we're asleep. And it moves through quite smartly, I think, as we move into the early hours of the morning. So yes, we'll get some rain. Breezy conditions for a short while too, and also milder conditions, so no worries with the temperatures overnight tonight. And then moving through quite smartly in the small hours of the morning. So for a while we will see some patchy rain, but as you can see, it's clearing around 4 or 5 in the morning, and temperatures dropping down to about 5 degrees with a brisk northwest breeze to start the day tomorrow. Now tomorrow is a nice day, plenty of winter sunshine. The breeze will gradually ease through the day. It'll take its time for that to happen. And perhaps right at the end of the day, just some high-level clouds spoiling that late sunshine. But it's a lovely day, 8 degrees the top temperature, a fine day for a walk with pretty good visibility too. There's the coastal waters forecast. Northwesterly force 5 to 6 at first, but decreasing 3 to 4, fair with good visibility. The times of high water, St Peterport, that's at 8:27, St Helier 8:20. And for our surface, bracing in the water at the moment, but if you brave the sea temperature of 9 or 10 degrees, 2 to 4 feet and choppy at the north coast, on the north coast of Guernsey. Here's the outlook. It is somewhat different as we move into Sunday. Sunday a similar temperature, perhaps the highest temperatures on Sunday though, right at the end of the day at around 9 or 10 degrees. And then we'll see some rain overnight, which could be around first thing on Monday morning, but move through and replaced by showers in the afternoon, and a bit up and down in terms of the temperatures as well. But a fine weekend. Claire.
Good to hear, David. Thanks very much. And that is it from me. Christina Gadoni has your late news at 10:25, and we're all back on Monday at 6:30. But now I'll hand you over to Justin and Janine for the rest of Spotlight. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Now, still to come in Spotlight tonight. The former postman turned top bowls player, but has Robert Paxton posted a hat-trick of world indoor titles? And find out which medieval wine is making a comeback thanks to the hit TV series Game of Thrones.
Now, businesses and homeowners across the region are breathing a rare sigh of relief as the cost of oil and other fuels continues to fall. The price of crude oil is less than half what it was in the summer, but not all firms are passing the benefits on to their customers just yet, and some are even missing out altogether, as our business correspondent Neil Gallagher explains.
Lower fuel costs are quite simply allowing his business to go back into profit.
Oh, a big deal. All the margins now for the beef and sheep and the dairy farmers are so tight that basically if we can buy a tank of fuel now, it's come down to nearly half price, a good third off, bound to make a world of difference to us all. Every little helps.
It's a similar story at this fish merchant's in mid-Cornwall, from where a fleet of vans ships fish daily around the region and up to London.
The price has been tailing, and I suppose when it first starts, you breathe a little sigh of relief and hope that it's going to continue. The price drop has been significant, and we've been able to pass that on to our customers through trimming off margins and providing better value for money because our overheads have reduced.
But by no means all firms are prepared to discuss whether they're passing fuel savings on to customers. Some big firms we approached had no one available for interview. One food industry body said it's too early for some firms to pass on the benefit after such a long, lean period.
At the moment, a lot of them are rebuilding their balance sheets. They're taking the extra profitability and reinvesting that in their businesses, which is something that they found difficult over the last few years. So yes, early days. Hopefully, as time goes on, if the price remains low, they will start feeding that into their own pricing, and customers should see the benefit.
The declining price of oil touches so many areas of life. We've been told that there's been a steep decline in the number of thefts of heating oil. Now, these always peak in the winter, and 2 years ago the number of recorded thefts in Devon and Cornwall was over 40 in the peak month. 1 year ago that had halved, and this year it's halved again.
Here I am, folks.
So, good news all round, unless you're among those who fixed their fuel costs. This old people's home in the Tamar Valley fixed theirs 6 months back near the peak of the market, a 5-year fix.
That's the way it goes, really. When you lock in, you know there's a chance that it might go down. I mean, we had a good price anyway, and over 5 years, I mean, who knows, next year it'll rocket up. So, you know, that's the way life is.
Happily, their home care staff are seeing some benefit. Their mileage rates have not been reduced, so they now have a bit more cash in hand. Neil Gallagher, BBC Spotlight, near Gunnersley.
Nice to have some good news for a change, isn't it? Time for the sport now, and Dave's here with news of our indoor bowler who was aiming for a hat-trick of world titles. This is Robert Paxton. He's had an amazing week, hasn't he?
He has, but has he made progress in the singles? Find out, that's coming up. The 5 Exeter Chiefs players called up to the England rugby squads this week all start in tomorrow's final European Challenge Cup pool tie against Bayonne at Sandy Park. Jack Noel, who's in Stuart Lancaster's plans for the Six Nations Championship, along with the Saxons quartet of Thomas Waldrom, Dave Ewers, Luke Cowan-Dickey and Henry Slade are included in a strong Chiefs lineup who can guarantee a home tie in the last 8 if they win. Yeovil Town's in-form striker Gozi Ugwu goes for his 3rd goal in a row as the Glovers seek to move out of League One's relegation zone by beating Coventry City at Hewish Park. Now, Ugwu scored in Town's win over Bradford.
1991.